This is a classic David versus Goliath story. It's one homeowner taking on their entire HOA board. But we're not talking about a fight over holiday decorations or the color of a front door. No, this was a battle that went all the way to court, and it all hinged on, get this, the meaning of a single word.
So let me ask you this. It's a question that really gets to the core of what it means to live in one of these communities. You pay your dues, you follow the rules, but who actually gets to make those rules? Can just a handful of people on the board, your neighbors, really change the constitution of your community whenever they feel like it?
And look, this isn't some made-up scenario. We're diving into a real-life case out of the Sycamore Vista subdivision in Tucson, Arizona. One resident saw his board make a change, thought, wait a minute, that's not right, and he was willing to bet he could prove they broke their very own rules.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The date is November 20th, 2017. The board of directors for the Sycamore Vista HOA is having a regular meeting. And at this meeting, they made a change to the community's bylaws, a change that, on the surface, looked pretty minor. But oh boy, the implications were huge.
So the original rule was crystal clear, a full annual audit. Think of it like a deep forensic accounting checkup every single year, super strict. Well, the board changed it to allow for a simple review or compilation, which are way less strict. With just a few words, they seriously weaken the financial oversight for the entire community.
And that's the multi-million-dollar question, right? It's exactly what homeowner Jay Janicek wanted to know. When he saw this change, he was convinced the board had totally overstepped its authority. He argued that a change this big needed a vote from all the homeowners, not just the few people sitting around a table on the board. So he did what you might think is the last resort. He took them to court.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, because this case wasn't really about accounting practices at all. Nope. At its heart, this was a bare-knuckle fight over power. Who has the final say to change the community's core rules, the board or the homeowners they're supposed to represent?
And the entire legal battle, everything, came down to this one sentence right here. It looks pretty straightforward, but the whole thing hinged on that one little word, members. Who are the members? Is it the members of the board? Or is it all of us, the members of the community?
Now we have to remember, bylaws aren't just a friendly suggestion list. They are a legally binding contract. The minute you buy a home in an HOA, you're agreeing to these terms. They're literally the constitution for your neighborhood, and that's why the power to change them is such a massive deal.
So, with the battle lines drawn over that single word, members, the case landed in front of an administrative law judge, and both sides came ready to argue their interpretation of that critical sentence.
All right, so on one side, you have the HOA. Their argument was pretty simple. Hey, this vote happened at a board meeting, so members obviously means board members. Makes sense, right? Well, not so fast. Mr. Janicek, on the other side, pointed out that everywhere else in the bylaws, the document is super careful to say directors when it means the board, and members when it means all the property owners. You can't just change the definition for one sentence to make it convenient.
And this is how he just dismantled their argument, piece by piece. He showed that the bylaws are really specific, but the real kicker, the absolute smoking gun, was that phrase, or by proxy. You see, board members aren't allowed to vote by proxy in Arizona, but regular homeowners are. That little phrase was the proof that this section was written with the entire community in mind, not just the board.
So, the arguments are in. The evidence has been presented. The judge has heard it all. After all this dissecting of the community's own rules, a decision had to be made. Did the board have the power, or did they go too far?
Well, Mr. Janicek filed his case, and pretty quickly, in September 2018, the judge ruled in his favor. But the HOA, they weren't having it. They dug in their heels and asked for a do-over, a rehearing. So they reviewed everything again, and in March of 2019, the final ruling came down. And in the end, the homeowner won. Again.
The verdict was crystal clear. The judge said, nope, members means all the homeowners. Since you never even told them about the vote, let alone let them participate, your amendment is invalid. The board's action was wiped off the books. The homeowner was right all along.
And the judge, Jenna Clark, just summed up the entire spirit of the case with this incredible statement. It's a really powerful reminder that a board's power isn't automatic. It has to be given to them by the community. They can't just assume authority they were never granted in the first place.
Now, you might look at that $250 fine and think, that's it? But don't let the number fool you. This wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. The HOA had to pay a penalty, sure, but more importantly, they had to refund Mr. Janicek's legal fees. The system worked. He stood up for his community's rights and didn't have to pay for it out of his own pocket.
So, why should you, sitting at home, care about some local HOA fight in Arizona? Because the lessons from this little legal drama apply to literally anyone who lives in a community with shared rules, whether it's a condo, a townhouse, or a single-family home.
The biggest lesson here is that Jade Janicek won for one simple reason. He actually read the documents. He understood his rights, and he used the board's own rules against them to hold them accountable. It just goes to show you, for any homeowner, knowledge of the rules is absolutely the ultimate form of power.
So what can you take away from all this? First, and this is the big one, actually read your governing documents. Know them. They're your power. Second, sweat the small stuff. We just saw how a single word can flip everything on its head. Third, show up to meetings. Be in the room where it happens. And finally, and this is so important, don't be afraid to question authority. Just because the board says something is true doesn't mean it actually is.
And that brings us right back to the beginning. This whole story started because one guy read the fine print and decided to ask a tough question. So the question I want to leave you with is this. After hearing all of this, do you really know who holds the power to change the rules where you live? Thanks for watching.